Well, 95 grain bullets for pronghorn hunting with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and 130 grain bullets in the 308 Winchester, and somebody's interested in neck shots on deer, and oh my goodness, there's even someone who might not like me on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Hey y'all, how you doing? Trust you're getting in the field here. It's autumn. The leaves are looking golden and red and orange, and it is absolutely the best time of the year, so I hope you're getting a field to enjoy it. Soak it up. Now, let's hear from a patron with a 308 Winchester. This is Hunter. Several days ago, he wrote and said, "Hey, Ron, I actually have a question. I know that you dislike the 308 Winchester, or at least you don't think that much of it, but it was my first rifle, and my dad bought it for me, and now I have quite a few firearms that are better suited for hunting here in western Nevada. I have a 260 Hornady, that's the 6.5 Creedmoor," a little joke there, "with a 26-inch bulled barrel." Wow. It's a Howa, and it's good for open space mule deer and pronghorn. I also have a 5.56 Ruger American Ranch version 2, and that one fires a 70 grain TSX bullet for hogs and Columbia blacktail deer over in California. I've decided to get a 30-06 to replace my 308 for elk because of the slight ballistic advantage of at least 100 feet per second. It should just make me a little more confident. Now, once I get that 30-06, I'm going to work up a load for the 175 grain LRX bullet. Hopefully it will shoot well. Now, here is my question. I have been running a ballistics calculator on the 130 grain TTSX out of the old 308 Winchester. It could be going almost 3,200 feet per second according to the handbook, and out to 500 yards, it's still going to be moving 2,200 feet per second with not horrible trajectory and only about 4 inches more wind drift than my 260 with 143 grain ELDX in a 10-mile-an-hour crosswind. Hunter here is really doing the detail work, and that kind of is important for really understanding this stuff. You guys, you don't have to know all this ballistic stuff, but I think most of us who really get into firearms and shooting enjoy that kind of fine detail. At any rate, let's continue with Hunter. My question is, do you think that this is a good option for high country mule deer and sheep? Maybe an aoudad hunt or a dull sheep hunt someday. I must add that this is one of my favorite rifles, and I shoot it extremely well, and sentiment is also playing a role, so do you think this would be a good option? Let me know. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, Ron. Oh, and then there was a quick follow-up from Hunter who said, also, if you hadn't quite figured it out from that previous note, I am a Magnum guy. No, I'm not a Magnum guy. I shoot a lot, and I just don't enjoy the recoil of Magnums. I can shoot them well enough. I've shot plenty of them, but I'd rather be proficient and confident with shot placement. I also believe that many hunters use Magnums to make up for limited range time, aka sloppy shooting. Yeah, Hunter, I can't disagree with you on that assessment. I think in many cases it's true, but not always. There are plenty of really effective Magnum shooters out there. Now, here is my response. I wrote back and said, "Sure, Hunter, your 130 grain TTSX 308 Winchester load will perform quite well. Regardless what we shoot, we choose compromises. Any faster, larger 30 caliber cartridge will best the 308 with this same bullet, but if you don't want the heavier recoil, if you don't want more expensive ammo and longer actions and all that stuff, shoot that 308 and live within its trajectory limitations. The game won't care, and if you have confidence in that rifle, so much the better. So enjoy." And I think Hunter probably had that figured out by himself, given all the research that he's done. But the important thing to notice there, in addition to the lightweight bullet going really fast, is that it is an all-copper bullet. So it is quite long for a 130 grain bullet. The lead versions would be a lot shorter, and that helps keep up the ballistic coefficient on that one. But mostly, that bullet, because it's all copper, there are no pieces to break apart, and those always have a reputation they live up to for deep penetration. So you can generally go down a weight category or two in those copper bullets and get the same performance that you would with the more traditional lead core bullets. So I would say your 130 grain TTSX in a 308 would be penetrating about like 150 grain in a lead core bullet. So good luck with that, Hunter. Let me know how you do. It sounds like you're going to be having some fun. Now, this is another patron, Mike. A couple of days ago, he wrote to tell me what his favorite deer cartridges were. And his top 5 are, number 1, 25-06. Number 2, 270 Winchester. Number 3, 6.5 by 55 Swede. That's a little bit different. Number 4 is the 7 Rem Magnum. And number 5 is 30-06. Boy, you've got about 3 of them there that are pretty much peas in a pod. That 270, 30-06, and 7 Rem Mag. Each one of those is just stepping on the heels of the other. The 7 Rem Mag will shoot the fastest and flattest and farthest and all the rest of it over, but not a heck of a lot more than the 30-06. That's been one sort of a myth over the long reign of the 7 Rem Mag, is that it was so hyper fast that it just put the old 30-06 in the cellar, but not the case. You look at some ballistics and you get about the same BC bullet pushed at the maximum velocities with the 30-06 and the 7 Rem Mag. And you'll find that at 300 yards, there's probably 1.5 to 2 inches of difference in drop and wind deflection. But the 7 Rem Mag, because it's starting out a little faster and is more aerodynamically efficient because of its narrower caliber, it will usually have about 300 to as many as 400 foot-pounds more retained energy downrange at 300, 400, 500 yards. So that's why it's kind of been so popular for longer range work out west. But boy, if you've got a 30-06 and you use the right bullets and know how to shoot, you don't have anything to worry about. All right, one more patron here is Mike. Mike says, hey, I asked gun dealers here on the eastern shore of Virginia which were the popular deer cartridges. 6.5 Creedmoor by far is the most popular. After that, 308 Winchester, 270 Winchester, not many 30-06s, hardly any of these new cartridges, so there's lots of debate on shot placement here. I have always been a heart-lung shot guy, but lots of people here shoot for the neck and some high shoulder. So I wrote back to Mike and said, hey, I know neck shots are popular, but I've seen too many deer rise from a neck shot like Lazarus and then run off. So a follow-up shot quickly would seem to be in order on those. High shoulder hits, now those are indeed deadly. If you miss high, and you'll probably hit the spine. If you hit a little bit low, you miss a little bit low, you're still in the heart and lungs, and the same for a little bit left or right. So it's a ball like that behind the shoulder heart shot, but there's less chance that you're going to deflect too far toward the behind the diaphragm for a gut shot. I think it is a good shot. Just make sure you're not shooting too high. Okay, now Johnny, I think, was writing in response to... No, he might be another patron, by golly. At any rate, just a day ago that he wrote in, he said, hey, Ron, fellow Westerner here. I also grew up in South Dakota, eastern South Dakota. I'm taking my daughter out for her first big game hunt next week. She has been shooting a suppressed Alpine CT from Weatherby, chambered for the 6.5 Creedmoor, and loaded with 95 grain Hornady VMAX bullets. That's a varmint bullet, highly frangible. She is shooting this rifle so well with the current loads that I'm wondering if I could safely stick with that VMAX when she goes after a pronghorn buck next week. What do you think? The rifle also shoots Hornady's match ammunition loaded with 140 grain ELDM bullets very well. When she tried them at the range, she hollered, "Ouch, Dad, that one really kicked." So would switching to the heavier load be worth the recoil? Thanks. By the way, I really enjoyed the show. We will be listening to your episodes that tell the stories of your pronghorn antelope hunts on the way out to her hunt. Well, great. I appreciate that, Johnny, and good luck to your daughter and you. You're going to enjoy the heck out of that. I got started hunting pronghorn in western South Dakota and had some really wild adventures. But let me read what I wrote back right away. I said, hey, your first pronghorn hunt? That's exciting. Best of luck to you and your girl. I hope it doesn't rain on you. My first antelope hunt was way out near Lemon, and it poured, it snowed, we got stuck, the camper leaked, and the truck broke down. But it all made for an article sale to American Hunter, one of the first stories I ever sold. By the way, that 95 grain VMAX load, that should work out just fine on a behind-the-shoulder shot. There is some chance that a frangible bullet like that could break up on a major bone or a muscle hit, but I rather doubt it on a pronghorn. I have taken pronghorn with a 55 grain 22-250 Remington and some pretty light frangible bullets in the 243 Winchester and the 6mm Remington, and those all worked fine. So heck, out by Bear Butte once, that's in western South Dakota, I once put a 58 grain coyote bullet from a 243 Winchester right on a big whitetail buck's shoulder, and it dropped quickly. I would stay confident. Use that 95 grain bullet, choose and take your shot carefully and calmly, and get that skinning knife ready because you're going to need it. So keep me posted on that one, and good luck. Boy, that's exciting to have your young daughter out on her first hunt. I mean, that's almost exciting, I think, for a parent or a grandparent to take a youngster out for that first hunt. It's almost exciting as your first hunt. At least it is for me. Now, these are some comments that came in on a short that we did, a video short talking about a lever action 4570, a Pedersoli lever action 4570 that a friend of mine in Alaska uses for bear protection. And of course, whenever you describe the perfect rifle for this, that, or the other thing, somebody's going to call in right in and let you know that you don't know anything. So we've got a few of those. But let's just see what we've compiled here. This gentleman says, I have the Marlin Tactical. I love that thing. It hurts to shoot it, but not because of recoil. It's actually not bad at all. It's because each bullet costs about $1.50 to $2. That's a new way to look at shooting pain. Here is Nexus. He says, or he asks, is a 44 Magnum caliber lever action good enough for bear protection? Ammo costs for those 4570s here in Canada are $4 to $5 a shot. Whew! A 44 Magnum is around $2 a round. Aside from the protection aspect, a 4570 is a very expensive gun to shoot. Yeah, I don't think anyone trying to stop a charging grizzly bear or brown bear is going to be too concerned about a $2 to $5 shot. I would be pumping $10 bullets downrange on that one. But, it's a good pragmatic thought. If you can get an effective caliber that's half the price for the ammunition, like a 44 Magnum, why not? So the question remains, is that a good or a suitable caliber? Yeah, it's long been known as a pretty good option in handguns. And of course, your rifle, if you get it in a longer barreled rifle, like 18 to 20 inch, you're going to be getting a higher velocity than from a 4 to 6 inch revolver. So what the hey? You're going to be driving a 240 or so grain bullets, pretty good speeds. I'd say 1,300 feet, maybe 1,400 feet per second. And yes, it's not the best option in the world. Fairly light bullet compared to what you're pushing through that 4570. There you're looking at the minimum 300 grains and probably 400 to as many as 500 grains. And it's that mass of a big long bullet that continues the momentum for deep penetration. And that seems to be the ticket for stopping bear attacks. When that bear is really ticked off and charging, he's usually not dissuaded by a little sharply scented pepper spray, but he's also not all that dissuaded by some slugs hitting him in the chest. Because if you don't break something down, something that keeps him moving, he will keep moving. A heart shot's not going to do it. Very, very rarely will a heart shot just suddenly drop even a deer, let alone a charging angry grizzly bear. So you are looking to break body parts, functional structural things, bones in the legs or hit the spine, that's perfect, or the brain. And that's why you need good hard bullet that will penetrate. You don't need a super lot of velocity, but you need good bullet mass and hardness. So you might want to look at Ron Spomer Outdoors' regular YouTube channel and look up the video. No, that was on our podcast channel, by golly. That was Philip Shoemaker, a master guide up in Alaska for more than 40 years. He's been living in bear country. I mean, he built a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. So he raised a family out in bear country, and he once had to shoot a bear that was trying to eat his clients. He was literally standing right over them, trying to locate them. And he had to protect those people, and he shot with a 9mm handgun, an autoloader. And he killed that bear with essentially 4 shots right in the heart-lung area behind the shoulder. As a pro guide, he knew right where to put those bullets, and he was using 147 grain. That's heavy for caliber, and they were hard cast lead flat nose bullets that penetrate well as you can expect from a 9mm. And it did the job. So 44 would be even better. So do go with your hard cast bullets. You don't want any kind of a hollow point or anything soft nose or anything like that on bear. But I think you can probably trust to a 44 Magnum. All right, let's see. DL Blade. I put a red dot on a Model 94 Winchester lever-action rifle in 30-30 years ago. It is the perfect combo for a close-quarters brush gun. Now, the reason that DL Bad said that is because in this video, the rifle I'm holding, it's a Patron 4570 based on the Winchester Model 86 or 71. Those were Winchester lever-action rifles that were pretty famous, still are. At least the 86 is still made. The 71 was a special that was chambered for the 348 Winchester cartridge back in the 1950s, maybe into the 60s. They occasionally will make a run of those, but it's not really a big deal now. But it's basically the same action. Now, I think all the patents and stuff for those have run out. And Patron makes them. I think maybe Rossi or some of these other companies overseas will manufacture the same rifle, basically, and give them slightly different names. So this is what this one was my friend has up there. It's a little bit unique in that it has a walnut stock, but it's covered in some sort of a durable waterproof coating. It's a little bit tacky, so it's really easy to grip. And he put a red dot sight on top of it. And I have to admit, it looks kind of clunky and funky, but boy, is it quick. If you've ever used a red dot, you throw that thing up, and you do not have to be looking perfectly down the center like on a scope. You can be quite a ways off to the side, up or down, and you're still going to see the red dot, and wherever that red dot is pointing is where that rifle is going to be delivering its bullets. There's no parallax involved in those red dots. And it's close range like that. What you need is a real obvious sight really quickly. Now, a lot of guys, of course, swear by open sights, but you've got to line two things up with an open sight. The rear notch or peep and the front post. With a red dot, you throw it up, you see the red, put it on the bear, bingo. So he likes it. A lot of people do, including DL Beatty here. So suit yourselves, guys. You got to use what works for you. What I don't like about that red dot on a lever action is because it's bulkier. In the brush and things, there's a chance you're going to knock it off or break it or something. This is the way I would think. Whereas good old iron sights, really strong ones, they're gonna haul the mail and stick to it, But my eyes don't see those sights very well anymore. So a red dot really would seem to work. I would go for a really low one and get a good, tough, strong one. Loophole's got a pretty good reputation for one that they make. I forget what the exact name of it is, but it is low, light, and strong. It's got that reputation, so you might want to look for something like that. Okay, now there's somebody else on this same topic. He just says, who makes that rifle? And I just said it was Patron. Here in the States, I think it's Italian Firearms Group out of Amarillo, Texas, that imports those. They import a bunch of these old cowboy guns and muzzle loaders and different things that Patron in Italy makes. And a lot of other Italy or Italian gun manufacturers, they import everything and then distribute those. So you ought to be able to find them at your local gun shops and usual places. And the exact name of that one, I think it was something like Revolution. The 86/71 Revolution. But just ask them for that lever action rifle from Patron with the walnut stock and the waterproof coating on it. That should pretty much define it. All right, let's see what, this is Nicholas Newman, 4931, and he says, they have this thing. It's called an AR that holds a lot more ammo than your 4570 lever action. Well, that's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up, Nicholas, because I hear this a lot. And I think it's mostly from the younger guys who sort of grew up with ARs and they really like them, really appreciate them. But I think you're barking up the wrong tree. Anybody who thinks the emphasis should be on magazine capacity and firepower when stopping a charge from anything, you're barking up the wrong tree because you don't have time to use all that. You might have 30 rounds in there, but you're probably only going to get 3 shots off before the bear's on you. So that's why traditionally anyone who wanted to stop a dangerous game animal like a Cape buffalo or a big bear or a lion wanted a big bullet. And it didn't really even have to be moving all that quickly. 2,000 to 2,400 feet per second was kind of the standard over in Africa for the big stuff. And I think it works just fine over here as well. But you're going to want recoil to be controllable, and this is going to take a lot of practice as much as anything. A heavy rifle helps a lot too, but who wants to drag that around all day? But boy, being able to go bang, 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 with a fairly light bullet is really not going to help you all that much. Now, somebody's probably going to write in and say, are you kidding? That's just what I did, and it saved my life. I'm sure that can happen. There's also the story of the woman in Alaska who killed a grizzly bear with a .22 long rifle, or maybe it was even a short, with a single shot to the head. There are always exceptions. We are concerned with pragmatic use here. And I just don't think an AR is all that pragmatic up there. But guys, suit yourselves, but just consider that. How fast is that bullet going? What is its weight? What is its length? Think about length, because you need a lot of mass in the back of that bullet, in the shank, to drive the nose forward. And I'm not sure you're going to get a lot of great options in an AR. Whereas that 45-70, been around since 1873. It's had a chance to prove itself. And I think the reason it's still hanging around is because it works. All right. But hey, thanks for writing in on that, Nicholas. You are not the only one who advocates for this thing called an AR. Red Pit Bull. 5 rounds is not a lot, Ron. See, same sort of thing. These guys are looking for numbers. Lots of cartridges to go bang, bang, bang. As I just explained, Red Pit, not necessarily going to get that many shots off. Those bears pop up. Now, that Phil story that I referenced a little earlier, he knew that bear was coming. He'd already scared it off once, and it ran away like it was going to leave, like they usually do, Phil says, and it sneaked around behind them, got their scent, and then came in again. And he heard it snapping and breaking the bushes. He knew what was going on. So he got ready, pulled out that handgun. That bear ran right over to where his 2 fishing clients were. They had been a presence of mind to just fall down in the tall grass. It was waist to chest high grass, so they just fell down. And the bear lost sight of them as he's charging through the alders and the willows, gets to that area where he'd last seen them, and now he is literally standing right over them. And Phil has that little 9mm, and he only had 7 rounds in it, maybe 8, but he only needed 4. I mean, that bear wasn't even charging him, and he only got 4 shots off. The bear ran after the 4th hit and then collapsed after maybe 30 yards or so. But Phil said, if I had had a rifle, I don't know if I would have even gotten it up and in position if that bear, when it finally broke out of the trees and I had a shot, had been coming at me instead of the clients. So consider that. Most of the bear charge stories that I hear are something like that, where it's just a split second or maybe at most 2 or 3 seconds before that bear is on you. Okay. Morgan. Honestly, they could use a better grade of wood for the stock. I love this one. Well, guys, no matter what we put out, no matter what anybody puts out, whether it's the greatest rifle in the world, the greatest bullet in the world, the greatest cartridge in the world, you could have perfection. Somebody out there is going to find something to complain about. So here is this utilitarian 45-70 carried around in the muck and the snow and the cold and the rocks and the rain. And this guy's complaining because they don't have a AAA walnut stock on the darn thing. Hey, that's all right, Morgan. If you've got the money and you want a fancy stock, I'll bet you could buy that rifle, throw the old stock away, and have someone custom make you a really good-looking one. And I would like that rifle myself. I'm just not sure I'd want to drag it around through the Alaskan brush. All right, let's see what this is. Harry Raji Rala. I don't know. Hey, don't try to popularize America under lever action rifles. You can never reach European steel and Mauser action. I think we've got a little translation issue going on here, but it sounds to me like Hari Rajahala is saying, don't try to popularize American lever action rifles. You can never reach or better or do better than a European steel and a Mauser action? To which I say, probably not, but who cares? We're stopping charging grizzly bears. We're not entering any sort of this is a better rifle. Gosh. You know what, guys? Bolt action Mauser rifles are kind of top of the heap, have been since 1898. They're the pattern, they're the benchmark from which so many rifles have been designed. The Winchester Model 70 is the most famous version of that, with a few improvements, most of us think. Nonetheless, that Mauser 98 is one of the top 2 dangerous game rifles used in Africa. If let's say a PH is going to be carrying a rifle with which to defend his clients against charging lions and leopards and buffalo and elephants and all the rest of it, he needs dependability, he needs firepower, he needs durability, and if he's not shooting an expensive side-by-side double rifle with 2 triggers, which many say is the absolute best, he probably has a Mauser 98, because they are all that rugged. So we are not trying to popularize American lever-action rifles over the Mauser. We're merely stating what so many people use up in bear country here in North America. They find the 45-70 to be one of their best options, and so many people up there use them. I'm sure there are a few that use a Mauser-style action in, say, a 458 Win Mag or something like that. But hey, there you go. We will popularize anything we'd like. This is Michael. Congratulations. Where's the after-action report of this hunt? Which hunt? Oh, the cabbage hunt. We posted a short with one of my 12-pound cabbages that I grew. Just joking around. I put on an orange vest or something, and I grabbed the rifle, and I grabbed this big cabbage, and I reported my hunting season's got off to a good start, and I bagged a Boone and Crockett, and I lifted up that cabbage just to be funny. So Michael is writing back in reference to that. Congratulations. What is the after-action report on that hunt? We need details, Ron. Caliber, range, dirt and fertilizer used, plot tips. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure how to put that into a caliber. Obviously, I wasn't really using a rifle. I used my fingers to seed into the dirt that I had dug up, turned over, gave it some good mulch after they started growing to keep the temperatures cool on the roots there. Used some organic fertilizer. We've got chickens. You know what chickens do after they eat. Put some of that in there, gave it plenty of water, and stood back and poof. The biggest secret I have for growing big cabbages is to put a complete shelter screen over the things. Otherwise, the bugs get in there, and it's just, you have heck to pay, especially those white cabbage butterflies. Oh, they lay eggs in there, and they just wreak havoc. Ever since I started using this little cloth sheer mesh kind of cover, I can grow big, fat, healthy cabbages without all the insect attacks. And the deer don't get them either. So those are my secrets. Thanks for joining in with the humor there, Michael. How about Tom? He's referencing a piece we did on a snub-nosed revolver chambered for the 475 line ball. Big cartridge, a little bit more powerful than the 480 Ruger, I believe. Same caliber. And Tom asks me this in reference to that short little video. Where do you live that bears are such a problem? Well, actually, where I live, bears are not a problem. This was up in Alaska where my friend is, and there's where bears are a problem. So yeah, Alaska, the western coast of British Columbia, up in the Yukon, usual places. But Idaho does have some pretty significant threats from grizzly bears. We've got Yellowstone National Park up in a corner of Idaho, and the bears, of course, are so used to people up there, and there's so much activity there. Boaters and fishermen and hikers and bow hunters, and there's a lot of elk there, and a lot of people bow hunt those elk. And you're out in grizzly country acting like an elk, bugling and cow calling and probably putting on some cover scents and different things, maybe a little elk urine. Pretty easy for a bear to think you're dinner. And even if you're not dinner and they hear you shoot, they have learned to come to the sound of that shot, but it probably means that you're bent over gutting an elk, and they can take either one of you. So those are some pretty serious concerns. And what was it, honey? Just a couple of weeks ago, there was some young kids up there?
There was a bear attack in eastern Idaho.
Yeah. That was up in the Centennial Mountain Range, I think. Yeah, some young men up there looked like they were probably 18, 19 years old. 3 young guys up to having a good time doing it themselves the good way. And this bear just, the kid that got attacked first managed to get off, 2 or 3 shots with his handgun before the bear was on him, and then his buddy started pouring rounds into the bear. And that, once again, emphasizes how quickly that stuff happens. There were 2 guys had handguns who were right there. They were bow hunting. Of course, they had to drop their bows, grab their pistols. Seems like they did a pretty good job of it, and they ended up killing that bear, but the kid had his arm mauled up pretty well. So that's where we live. That bears are a problem, I guess, but we're far enough away from here that we haven't had any issues with them yet. All right, this is 419 Lunchbox. Oh, he's also talking about this 475 line ball. I probably tell you about this. Again, this is a friend of mine in Alaska who packs for everything. And this thing is really, at first I thought, oh, gee. But it makes a lot of sense. It's a custom 5-shot revolver in a big, heavy 475 line ball. Pretty sure he was shooting 420 grain, flat-nosed, hard-cast bullets for that deep penetration we've talked about. But the barrel on that thing was only 2 inches. Might have been 2.5, but I remember it was 2. At any rate, why such a tiny barrel on that thing? Oh my gosh, the muzzle blast and the recoil and all the rest of it. Bear protection. You're going to be fishing. You're going to be running your boat. You're going to be hiking. You don't need this monstrous, long-barreled handgun hanging off you. You want something compact. So you don't get a big cylinder for 6 shots. You get a smaller one for 5 shots because, once again, you might be lucky to get 3 off. So you want something that you can whip into action, and it doesn't have to have a long barrel. It just has to be right in the bear's face. So I think it's a pretty darn good option. What do you guys think? And let's see what Lunchbox thinks. See, that's what's wrong with these videos on YouTube. They're always trying to make it sound like you need the biggest hammer to hit the nail. My grandfather hunted everywhere from Canada and down, and he never went out in the woods with anything bigger than his .32 Ruger Tomcat revolver. I think maybe one example does not apply to everybody. I am glad that your grandfather has a great time out there and was not attacked by a bear. But that doesn't prove anything. I haven't been attacked by a bear either, and I've spent a considerable amount of time up in the North Country with bears too. This is not about what happened to me or your grandfather or anyone else. This is about what might happen to you, like those 2 kids that got attacked by the grizzly bear up in North Idaho a couple of weeks ago. So it's just really that simple. This is kind of a common position that people take. It's like, I've never been attacked by a bear, and none of my friends have been attacked by a bear, so this is nonsense. Why would you even worry about it? Until you meet the guy who was chewed up by the bear, and then it is a big deal. But hey, it's free country, so suit yourselves. All right. Good comments, guys. I'm glad you guys have the nerve to write in with these kinds of comments, taking us to task, because I think it gives us all a chance to stop and think. And that's what discussions and debates are all about. It's not name calling and proving that you know more than the next guy. It is, okay, that's an interesting idea. Here's what I think's wrong with it. And then you get to respond and say, yeah, but you forgot about this, that, and the other thing. And then we all get to make up our own minds. Okay, what else do we have here? Someone called Aquadoc. Sounds like an underwater adventure here. Ron, I have bounced around from liking you to hating you. And after a lot of reflection, I've decided I like your stance probably 98% of the time. Thank you. Now, I'm not so sure maybe Betsy didn't send this in under a pen name. Because that's about the ranking I get from her on most things, Aquadoc. But hey, I am glad to hear it. I will take 98% anytime. And guys, even if you only like me 50% of the time, or even not at all, if you're honest about it, don't call me names and want to write in and comment and tell me how stupid I am and can prove it with some good solid data, I more than welcome that. Because I do not want to be dispensing incorrect information. I get enough things accidentally wrong anyway. So call me on it. I just kind of depend on you. I have often said we're sort of in this together, and I'm not sending down the 10 Commandments from on high here. I am sharing what I've learned, what I've studied, what I've experienced, and I expect you guys to counter that or back me up if you want, because we all need to learn these things, and I think this is a great way to do it. Okay, appreciate that, Aquedoc. Now this is CD, and he's east of the Mississippi. And this is more comments on which are the more popular deer hunting cartridges. He says east of the Mississippi, it's a 308 Winchester, the 300 Winchester Magnum. Now that one surprises me for east. 25-06, that one also surprises me, and the 30-06, just because it's wrong not to have one. No, this sounds more like his preferred. I'll bet you that's what it is. He's not reporting on what's most common where he is. These are the ones he would pick. So, hey, I'm okay with that. I love the 25-06 myself. It wouldn't be my top pick for woods hunting, although I have used it in some eastern hardwoods quite successfully. But, boy, once you get across some open fields, and especially out in the west for pronghorn and mule deer, it's fun. Hey, thanks for that, CD. I think you're not going wrong with any of those, although you're a little redundant. A 308, a 30-06, and a 300 Win Mag, you're looking at the same bullets, the same diameter. You're just moving them a little faster each time you step up the progression there. Hey, but that's okay. If it works for you, by golly, go for it, because all three of those are proven winners. All right, let's see what Colt has to say. This Colt is not spelled with a C like the Colt revolver. This one is with a K. And he's asking about, it looks like scopes, hunting scope size. A larger objective lens brings in more light into the scope. That's true. And it slightly affects the field of view. I'm not so sure that's true. It might be. I'm not real clear on that one. But he continues. If low light shooting is something that you're concerned about, a larger objective lens does matter. If not, then don't worry about the size of the objective lens. You don't have to trust me on this. Go check out Vortex Podcast for a better explanation than I can give here, because that's where I learned it. Well, great, Colt. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the guys at Vortex do some great podcasts. You want to check those guys out. They really go into depth. They do a lot of cool studies. You know, they'll shoot ballistic gelatin and do all sorts of testing, and it's fun. But obviously, it's Vortex Optics. They ought to know what they're talking about. Now, I used to write columns as the optics columnist for several magazines over the years, and I had to study a lot about optics. I went to different factories, Zeiss and Swarovski and Leupold, and I talked to the experts and the engineers, and what I learned was several things, but one was that not everybody in the optics industry understands it. Yeah, that really surprised me. I would ask them questions, and I was not getting good answers. And few guys would be bold enough and honest enough to say, that's not my strong suit. I'm in marketing. My job is to sell these things, not explain how they work or build them. And that made a lot of sense to me. I said, okay, cool. Who do I talk to? And then they would reference one of the engineers who design these things. So what I learned, if I can go into detail on scopes here, I think this is important because the essential things you want to know about scopes are, it's a telescope, and the bigger the objective lens on any telescope, the more light that it lets in. But then, as you notice, the scope is shaped like big barrel out front, a little bit smaller one at the back at the eyepiece, and that necks down in the middle to the main tube diameter. And the main tube diameters over the years have been all sorts of things, but they sort of standardized at 1 inch and then 32 millimeter. That was the European style, a little bit bigger. And now they've gone to 34, and I think they're even getting bigger than that. And years ago, there were some of these marketing guys who said, boy, you want to get this European scope with the 32 millimeter main tube because it's just like a garden hose. You're getting more water through it. You're getting more light through it. It's a brighter scope. Well, it wasn't true. Brightness in a scope involves two things: the diameter of that objective lens to let more light in, but then the magnification at the eyepiece, which reduces the amount of light that gets out as the power increases. What it does is it creates a little hole, kind of like a keyhole, perfectly round, in the eyepiece that you are looking through. And you get your eye relief just right. When you're far back from a scope, a telescope, binocular, anything like that, rifle scope, you're going to see that black shadowy edge with a little light hole in it. You get closer and closer, and that gets wider and wider until you've got a full view. And then if you continue getting closer and closer, you're getting less and less eye relief, and the shadow comes back. So what it amounts to is the light is coming out in not parallel rays, but bent rays to a point. And then they flare out again. So it's like the middle of the hourglass. That's what you're seeing. That's what that exit pupil is. The center of the sort of the hourglass. And it is anywhere from 1 millimeter, tiny little diameter, up to 4, 5, 7 millimeters. And that makes a difference. The bigger the exit pupil diameter, the more light that's coming through that little tunnel. And the main tube of the scope doesn't affect that. It's the diameter of the objective lens divided by the magnification that you've set. So if you have a 50 millimeter lens up front and you turn your power ring up to 10x, 10 goes into 55 times, you've got a 5 millimeter exit pupil. Turn it down to 5 and you've got a 10 millimeter exit pupil. Way brighter. You're getting a lot more light through. But can you use it? Aha. Now we've got to tie this exit pupil of the scope with your pupil in your eye. This is why they call that thing the exit pupil. It's the scope's pupil. There's your pupil right in your old eyeball. And that opens and closes to let more or less light in, right? Turns out that the human eyeball can shrink down to about 2.5 millimeters. That's what happens in bright sunlight. After which, the sun stays bright, and you need sunglasses or you get that painful light in your eyes all day you don't enjoy because you can't shrink down to 1 millimeter, which would be handy if we could. At the other end of the spectrum, though, in the evening when the light goes down and the deer start to come out of the shadows, you need to open up that pupil of yours to let more light in. You start to dilate, and a young person can dilate to 7 millimeters. Maybe a few folks can even get to 8 millimeters, but that is opening really big to let all the light into your eye that you can possibly take in. So now we're going to tie that to the exit pupil of our scope. And we've got our 10 by 50, and we're at 5 millimeters, and it's full daylight. We got a 2.5 pupil ourselves. All that extra light from that 5 millimeter exit pupil is just bouncing off the iris of your eye. The light's got to get through your pupil. If it hits your iris, everybody can say you've got brown eyes or blue eyes or green eyes, but that light is bouncing off. It's not getting into your retina, to the fovea at the back, where's the nerve that sends the signals up to your brain to say that's what you're looking at. It's fun stuff, and it's kind of complicated, but this is what's going on. So what's the upshot of all this? You're not gaining anything by having a 10 millimeter exit pupil on your scope. You are not gaining anything in the middle of the day with a 5 millimeter if your own pupil is shrunk down to 2.5 or 3 millimeters. But in the evening, now is when you want to see maximum light through that scope, and it is worth having the bigger objective up front or turning your magnification down. If you still have that 50 millimeter objective up front and you come from 10 power down to 5 power, you've got as big an exit pupil, more exit pupil than you can use. So do the math on those things and you realize you do not need to have a giant objective unless you really want a lot of magnification. And I used to think, that's not bad to have something like that for the long shots where you really need that power. But then I got to thinking, do I really want to take a long poke at a deer at last light? By the time I get over to that deer, the light may be gone, and if I didn't make a perfect shot, I might not find the deer, I might not be able to see the blood trail, etc., etc. A lot of things to consider. The upshot is, I have determined for myself and the way that I hunt that a 44 millimeter objective, and quite often a 40 millimeter or even a 36 millimeter, is more than enough because I keep my powers below 10. Many reasons for doing that, one of which is you've got more field of view and you're going to be able to watch your target as you shoot and you see the recoil is coming back. There's enough field of view there that you should be able to see the bullet either hit the animal or the dirt around it or something. You have an idea of where you hit. You got that thing cranked up to 10 power or more, and you're probably going to lose that sight picture. And then you go, where did he go? Did he fall down? Did he run off? Did I miss? Did I hit him? Where did I hit him? How did he react? You've missed it all. So there are a lot of good reasons not to have super high power. And then the other thing about wider field of view and things with a bigger objective, that I am not convinced is true. I had not heard it from any of the engineers I spoke with, but I hear enough rumors about it that I want to investigate a little further. But what I do know about it is, regardless what your objective lens diameter is, your field of view, or the distance from seeing that full view through the exit pupil, the eye relief, that distance can be altered, and then you either gain or lose field of view. Some of the field of view is built into the scope through all the different systems of lenses that they use internally. And we've only been talking about the objective lens and the eyepiece lens. There's a whole bunch more in there, as many as 7, 8, 9, even 10 in different scopes. So it gets real confusing in the middle. But the upshot is, if you get closer to that hole, you see a wider field of view. If you get further away from it, you see less, just like looking through a peephole or a keyhole. So you sacrifice field of view for more eye relief. Why not just shrink that eye relief down and get more field of view? Because the scope will hit you in the head. Recoil, you'll get scope bashed. That's why you want to have some good eye relief. You don't want to get right up against that rifle scope. You do your binocular or your spotting scope. The only problem there is you get too close and your eyelashes blink on the glass and gets all smeared up. But do consider that for your rifle scope, you want to have, at least 3 inches. The heavier kick in your rifle, the more eye relief you want. I like 4 inches, even 4.5 inches. But do know that when you go there, you are going to give up a little field of view, and that's the distance on either side of whatever you're looking at out there. At 100 yards, you get so many feet, 300 feet, 340, 280. It just varies depending on the design of that instrument. Betsy, any questions, or are you totally confused? She's sleeping. I just woke her up. That is another point. Someone commented not long ago that they used me to cure insomnia. They just put me on and fell asleep.
I think the question was having too much scope.
It was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's been so long since I read the question, I forgot.
That was a comment. One of your shorts was, don't use too much.
Oh, that's what initiated this response from this guy. Okay, Colt says, all right, I said in a previous broadcast, don't use too powerful of a scope. I just reiterated that, but I explained why not, so that's useful. We're going to go to Ohio, where Luke asks this. Ron, I have an 8mm Mauser. I'm getting it rebarreled to something I'd like a little more potent. Any suggestions on what route to go? I'm thinking maybe a 35 Whalen or something like that. Thank you. Luke, I don't think there's enough difference between the 8mm Mauser, which is a 32 caliber, about the same volume as a 30-06, and the 35 Whalen, which is a 35 caliber, definitely the same volume as a 35-06 because it's the 35-06 necked up to 35 Whalen. So you were going to get a little more power out of that 35 Whalen, but not a heck of a lot. So, for instance, if you put a 200 grain bullet on your Mauser, which is usually the heaviest one that it comes in, you can drive that thing about 2,900 feet per second, and that's about the same you can do with the 35 Whalen with the same weight bullet. Maybe 50 feet per second more with the Whalen, I'm guessing. So the difference actually is you're going to have better performance out of the Mauser because it's a narrower diameter bullet. It's more aerodynamically efficient. It'll retain more energy downrange. But if you go with a heavier bullet in the Whalen, now you're going to see an advantage. Go to a 225 grain or even a 250 grain bullet in the 35 Whalen. And it's going to be going more slowly, obviously, but it will have the momentum for deeper penetration. And that will give you an advantage on the larger animals, bears, moose, the bigger antelopes in Africa, and that sort of thing. But otherwise, you might want to consider a 375 Ruger. I don't know if you want to stick with traditional cartridges or go with some of the modern ones. The advantage to some of these modern cartridge designs is not that they're hitting harder and shooting faster and flatter and all the rest of it. It's that they're more efficient. So An 8mm Mauser is a little bit shorter action, probably the same action length that'll handle a 30-06 length action, but that's not probably going to handle the 375 H&H. The 375 Ruger is designed to fit the shorter action and put out the same energy, same ballistics as a 375 H&H, which is why I suggested it. But I might be wrong. You might be able to fit that 375 H&H in your Mauser. Also the 9.3x62. That's real popular over in Europe. I don't know if, no, in Ohio, you're not in Europe. Oh, let's see. What else could you go with? Yeah, something more potent. I think you have to define what potent means. It's kind of a big term that could fit a lot of things. You want more penetration and a heavier bullet. Do you want faster and flatter? A lot of ways to go potent. So think about that. But I think you're on the right track. But look at it at your ballistics. Compare these different cartridges that you're considering and the kinds of bullets that they shoot, and that will help you decide. Also consider whether you can get the ammo. 10 years ago, I would have said, sky's the limit. But these days, things have gotten tight, and there's just a lot of cartridges out there for which very few, if anyone, is loading ammunition. Even my 757 Mauser, I'm having trouble finding ammo for. I finally found a couple boxes of Winchester and Cellier and Below, that Italian maker. I found some 757 loads from them on Ammunition Depot, one of these online ammo sites. Boy, it was just like bingo, and they were here. I had snooped all around this country. I've even got buddies up and down looking in the different cities for ammo, and they cannot find 757. One buddy found a couple of boxes of Remington, one found a couple of boxes of Federal. But now I've got a couple of boxes of Winchester and a couple of the Cellier Boa, and I am going to be testing those out. But be aware, you don't want to get an old cartridge for which you probably can't find ammo. All right, now we're going to go to, looks like Quebec, with Robert. Ron, sure enough, my name is Robert. I'm from Australia. Ah, okay. I own a Ruger American 22 long rifle and a 223. How can I shoot at 500 yards with the 22, but 1,000 with the 223? Well, I'm not being facetious here, but I would say you just need to aim a little higher. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me here, Robert, but boy, 500 yards with a 22 rimfire, whew, that is a long way. But I know there are guys who do it. It seems to me I saw something recently about I think it was an Australian couple. Somebody and Mike in the evenings that have a pretty successful channel in which they do a lot of long-range shooting and crazy things, and are really good at it. I think they're Australian. At any rate, they were shooting 700 yards, I think, with a 22. See, the problem with a 22 rimfire is you've got high velocity and standard velocity, or sonic and subsonic. And when you get in the transonic range, as Chuck Yeager found out flying the X-15 before the sound barrier was ever broken, meaning they went faster than the speed of sound, 1,000, 1,100, depending on the altitude and the temperature and stuff. But once you get to that point, the plane started shaking violently, and people were predicting that he was going to blow up, disappear, go flying into another dimension, something, because there's this instability. As air gets more dense, as you're stacking it up in front of the plane's nose or the bullet's nose, and it creates problems. So while with 22 rimfires, 1,250 feet per second is kind of your standard long rifle velocity, and it very quickly slows down to that transonic range and then starts going, you lose your accuracy. So most accurate shooters of the 22 start off with the lighter, slower load, so they don't have to go through that transonic range. But then you've got a bullet going 1,000 feet per second, and how does it get there? You've got to aim really high, and that takes a long time. And while it's taking a long time, it's subject to all sorts of air currents, and it's a challenge. So I do not have the answer for you, sir, other than it's going to be a challenge. And then the 223, much less, but still fairly significant. It goes a lot faster initially, but it then gets into that transonic range out there. I don't know at what distance. I have not tried shooting to 1,000 yards with a 223. But I'm sure there are folks who do it, and that's why the 67 to 77 grain bullets are popular in 223s, one of the reasons. because that has a much better chance of resisting wind deflection out there really far. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you than that, Robert. It's kind of out of my wheelhouse. Oh, here he is again. Robert, this time he says, I do competition target shooting, and I love it. What caliber would be the best for a disabled person who has a shoulder injury? I have been 5 years doing target shooting, and I am representing Queensland in the state championship. Robert, what are you asking me this stuff for? It sounds like you're the expert here. Well, yeah. Congratulations, sir. Wow, that's something. State championship. Well, you know a lot more about target shooting than I. What are you using? The 6XC, the 6 Dasher, the 6 millimeter seem to be pretty popular from guys who I know shoot it. And then a lot of the 6.5s, of course, and the 7 millimeters are really strong. But I don't know what to tell you beyond that. You know more than I do. Wow. Anybody wanting to shoot precision shooting is going to figure out pretty quickly why all this buzz about high BC bullets. That is what wins competitions. You want consistency, but you want a bullet with a high ballistics coefficient to minimize wind deflection, because that's the one thing you cannot control or predict. Gravity is consistent. You know, okay, I got this much drop. I'm always going to have this much drop. But the wind, man, once you get out to 1,000 yards, just a subtle little difference in the wind can really change where those bullets land. And plenty of studies have been done proving this. You just get less left to right windage dispersion with a higher BC bullet. And then you don't want a rifle that kicks so bloody much that you can't control it and shoot it well. So you go to the lighter calibers and the lower velocities because you don't want to burn out your barrels too quickly, and all sorts of little things that you have to consider. So it's really quite a specialty. All right, who else do we have here? Rolf. This gentleman is from Canada. I have 3 young men ready to buy their first hunting rifles. Being an old fart, I am recommending old popular cartridges like 308 Winchester, 708 Remington, 270 Winchester, or 7-rem mag. Highest recoil, so it's not at the top of our list. Now, wait a minute. I'm going to take a little bit of exception to you being an old fart if you're calling the 7mm 08 Remington an old cartridge, because that didn't come out until 1980. Now, the 308, I can kind of give you that one. That actually came out before I was born, but not by much. The 270 Winchester, yeah, you're going back to 1925 there, so good. We'll let you have that one. 7-rem mag, 1962. That'd be at the top of my list, but I hear you. First hunting rifles, you don't really need that. All right. Now, all of these have good availability. Well, maybe not so much the 708, he says. Good ammo supply, cheap ammo, except for the 7-rem mag. You're narrowing it down over yourself here, Rolf. They are good for our hunting deer up to the size of moose, mostly under 100 yards with 200 yards as their max. So low to moderate recoil for good shooting habit development, good concern. Now, they being young men, are they looking at the latest and greatest? 6.5 cm, the 6.5 PRC, the 7 PRC, and some of the magnums, of course. That's what they're looking at. But these all have great ballistics, but they're beyond our needs. The ammo's hard to find, and it's often expensive. So, am I being too old-fashioned? What advice and reasoning would you give these men on choosing their first hunting rifle? Thanks. Okay. All right, for all the old fuds out there, how do you tell these kids? How do we slap some sense into them? Well, first of all, you have to allow them to be who they are, which is kids who want the latest and greatest. And really, these new cartridges do have some wonderful attributes. So you don't have to dissuade them all that much. But I think it's worth saying, hey, now, how practical is this choice? You might love that 7 PRC or the 6.5 PRC, but can you find ammo? How much does that ammo cost? Do you think you're going to become a better shooter, a more successful hunter, if you don't practice because your ammo costs twice as much as you thought it would? Or should you get the more affordable ammunition and rifle, train with it so that you're a deadly shot, and don't worry so much about whether it drifts an extra inch in the wind at 400 yards or not? Those kinds of practical concerns. So I would definitely say that you and they should sit down, look at your ballistic numbers, look at your ballistics calculator, and really study it and see, wait a minute, I thought that 7 PRC was going to be shooting twice as fast and flat and drifting half as much in the wind as the old fuddy-duddy 30-06. But according to these numbers, there's only about 2 inches of difference clear out to 300 or 400 yards. So what's the advantage? And if I'm only going to be shooting moose at 100 to 200 yards, there's no advantage. Maybe old grandpa's not so dumb after all. So that's how I would approach it. You just come up with the numbers. Don't go by what Billy Bob down the street claimed was the best and the greatest, or some guy down at the local pub swore after his third beer was the absolute deadliest deer taker in the world and all the rest of it. Go for the hard numbers. Nothing wrong with the 6.5 PRC and 7 PRC and all the rest of those, but there's nothing wrong with the 270 or the 308 or the 708 or all the rest of them you discussed. So just be pragmatic about it. How much is the rifle going to cost? Can you find the ammo? What are the costs of it all? What is the recoil? Are you going to practice and train properly with them, et cetera, et cetera? You should get yourself a pretty good setup, each one of those guys. Good one. Very good. I like that. Dustin from Florida. Mr. Spomer, I have recently been interested in the Lazzaroni cartridge lineup. I was wondering what you thought about these cartridges, specifically the 6.53 Scramjet. Do you think it would be worth choosing over a 257 Weatherby Magnum? No. Ooh, Mr. Lazzaroni's going to hate me for saying this. Hey, nothing wrong with Lazzaroni cartridges except they're proprietary, which means you're not going to go down to your local mom and pop and buy a box of Lazzaroni cartridges. Now, this might not be a big deal. If you're a hand loader, no. And if you buy them direct from Lazzaroni, no. What Mr. Lazzaroni has done with all of his cartridges is maximize their velocity by designing the cartridge for that, straightening out the walls, giving it a sharper shoulder, and all the rest of it. Very well designed cartridge, but also building them extra strong and pushing his pressures to 70,000 PSI. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lazzaroni, but I believe that's your standard for all your cartridges. And then he gives them these cool names like Scramjets and Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's got some really fun ones in there. And they will shoot about as flat as or flatter than anything else out there. So if that's your goal, if you really want to shoot flat and minimize all the wind deflection and different things with big bullets and all the rest of them, look into his line of cartridges because they are really pretty special. But again, it's proprietary. He builds you the rifle. I suppose another gunsmith could build a rifle. I'm not sure if they can get the reamers to chamber them or not, but you probably have to go to Lazzaroni. But if that's what you want to do, you buy the rifle from them, you buy the ammo from them, and you're off to the races. So, yeah. Do I think you're going to have a huge advantage over the 257 Weatherby? No, but most people who are looking at these kinds of top-end cartridges and rifles are looking for just a little bit better, not necessarily a whole lot better. And it's got more to do with, I am really interested in this stuff than pragmatic uses. I don't imagine that it's going to be that much faster than the 257 Weatherby Magnum, but I haven't studied it all that much, so maybe it adds 200 feet per second. I would guess it'd be closer to 100, if that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any Lazzaroni shooters out there, let me know how it's going and how much you love those cartridges and rifles. Oh, another Florida. I hear a lot from Florida people. Alan. Ron, I love watching your YouTube videos discussing various cartridges. Now, here's a comment. It seems to me that many of our modern cartridges are designed for better ballistic performance at distances found mostly out west. In the heavily forested east, where many hunters never get a clear shot much more than 100 yards away, much less 200 yards, it would seem that no one would need anything other than a 223, 243, 270, 308, or 30-06 for any kind of varmint or big game. I get that someone who is looking for their first hunting rifle might want to consider a more modern cartridge, but to us old fogies, it seems like there are just too many kinds of ammo for manufacturers to support. I own a Winchester Model 94 XTR in 30-30, a 6.5 by 55 Swede built on a commercial FN Mauser bolt action, and a 30-06 also built on an FN Mauser. For hunting in Maine, I can't see ever needing anything else. Oh, I do have an AR-15 in case I want to shoot coyotes. Why would I need one of the new cartridges? You wouldn't. Thank you, Alan. Good night. No, Alan, you've got it figured out. And again, this is one of the things that I emphasize most of my broadcasts really is, guys, there's a lot of options out there. Pick the one that works for you. Some of us just love to say that we've got the latest and greatest that shoots fatter and flatter and wider and smells better than anybody else's, just so we can say that. And others take pride in saying, oh, I've got an old muzzle loader, and by God, I can take any game out there because I'm a real hunter. That's valid too. Whatever turns your crank. That's what's so wonderful about US of A. We have freedoms. We get freedom of choice, and that leads to all sorts of cartridges that most of us can't keep up with. But that, again, is choice. Someone wants to design a cartridge, whether it's Winchester or Remington or Federal or Lazzaroni or Smith & Wesson, they can do it. And we can buy it or we can ignore it. We can make fun of it, whatever. Whatever turns your crank, man, go for it. All right. No, we're going to go to South Africa now. Grant. Dad wasn't a hunter. Hey, Ron. Betsy, you get mentioned in this one. I would like to say thank you for the podcast. So you're quite welcome. Is Grant welcome, honey?
Yes, very.
Very welcome. I came across your channel on YouTube. I do a lot of traveling in South Africa, and I have moved from listening to your podcast versus the radio. I find that what you have to say is much more insightful. Well, I suspect that you have a bias towards cartridges and rifles and hunting than what's on the radio. At any rate, appreciate that. He continues, starting today, I listened to episode 246. Well, you know how to make a grown man shed a tear. I lost my dad suddenly in March of 2022, and much like your dad, he was always there to make us two boys succeed no matter what. He was a great hunter and a PH license, so he used to do guided hunts during the hunting season. My only regret was that I did not hunt enough with him. He passed 1 month before our last hunt was to take place. Life happens, I suppose. But I inherited his Model 70 Winchester 270. Since then, we go bird shooting every year, and for plains game, in his honor, and to keep the tradition, to share the legacy with friends and family. My son now comes with me every year. Next year, he will take his first animal, probably a blazebuck. My daughter was a non-hunter, but I see that she is slowly turning around. She says nothing better than making biltong, and she mentions that every year. Next year, we will also be her first adventure. She may decide to not shoot, but she is great behind a rifle when she's on the range. It will be great having them both there, whether they shoot or not. My wife, however, will be a hard nut to crack, although she supports us 100%, which is great. Arranging a family hunt for next year that she can be with us on as well. So I love them all dearly. I guess I'm writing you the same as if I were telling my dad the stories. You have the same charm and outlook. Not to mention the stories, the only thing he would add is, let me draw you a picture. Love listening to you guys, and possibly one day our paths will cross, even if only in a story. Regards from sunny South Africa. P.S. Hunt honest and shoot straight. Oh, Grant. That was really great. Oh, I love that sort of heartfelt response, guys. You know, quite often people think, oh, you hunters and shooters are just a crass bunch, but I find that most of us have a real soft spot. And especially when it comes to our families, our dads, and the memories that we make and were made, and now we get to do it with our kids and grandkids and stuff, and it keeps the tradition going. Just think how far back this tradition of the hunter-gatherer goes. You know, well beyond grandparents and great-great-grandparents. I mean, it goes back to the Dark Ages and beyond that. Think of the primitive peoples living in their huts or their teepees and sharing the fire, and somebody comes back with a deer or a bison or something, and they share the meat with the community, and we knitted together, and we evolved this way. And it's just such a remarkable story. I don't know why someone in Hollywood hasn't yet been able to create some kind of a movie that captures that. There are snippets here and there that do, but maybe I ought to write the screenplay for that. But yeah, that is just a great part of our hunting tradition. So thanks so much, Grant, for sending that in. I don't know if we should end right there or read one more. No. Betsy says, cut it off, man. That one slammed it home. And that makes it easy to pick our comment of the week. Hang in there. Well, there you go. You already know who is going to win the comment of the week, and that is Grant from South Africa. What a heartfelt letter. This is the right approach to take, folks. We're hunting for all those reasons and more. So more power to you, Grant, and all the rest of you out there. Thanks for your criticisms, your advice, your support in your comments. We really, really appreciate it. Right, Betsy?
Oh, yes.
You're supposed to use that new microphone we got you.
We totally appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, everyone. Let us know what we can do to help things out, improve the channel, whatever you think. We're always open to suggestions, and we are pretty excited about hunting season coming right up here, and hope you are too. We will see you next time. In the meantime, hunt honest and shoot straight.